But I'm your true love.
Then where were you when I needed you?
Hey guys, it's the Pink King here. Helluva Boss is back with part 1 to its season 2 finale, The Mastermind. And what did I think? Well, this episode is everything right and wrong with Helluva Boss. And it's not for the reason you might think. What do I mean? Well, let's talk about it, shall we? But first, what is this episode about? Well, for once the story is pretty straightforward. The imps have been figured out by Stella's brother, aka Elsa if she decided to not let it go. But I'll get to him in a moment. So yeah, the imps have been caught and put on trial in front of Satan. And the trial will determine who lives and who dies. That's just a quick synopsis without giving any spoilers for you. But let's get into the nitty-gritty stuff, shall we? Was this episode any good? Is this episode great, or is it another failure? Well, it's fantastic. This episode really surprised me with just how good it was, but, and yes, there's always a but with this show, this episode, despite being so good, feels really, really off. And that's because this episode is unfortunately let down by the rest of season 2. But Pink King, I hear you say, that makes no sense. Well, allow me to put it into perspective for you. It's like if you watch a TV show, let's say Arcane, why not? If you watch a TV show, but start off at the very end with the last episode for some reason, you see all these fantastic things, all these real good payoffs, but the problem is you have no idea what's going on because you didn't see what came before. And it feels the same here. This episode is so different to every other episode in this season that it feels like a completely different show. A lot of what happens here comes completely out of nowhere. Because, well, it does. The whole reason the events of this episode happen is because Stella is stupid. One of the most important details of the entire series. She's just been sitting on a little bit of information for 2 seasons now. Unbelievable. And that's the very catalyst for everything that happens in this episode, which just feels stupid. Because if you watch this episode, it does all the right things, man. It has good writing, good dynamics, and great performances. But it feels unearned because they just suddenly throw it in at you and say, figure it out yourself. The entire season has essentially been about nothing. There's been no end goal in sight. There's been no real narrative thread throughout this entire series. It's just been a lot of things happening for no real meaning. So when you get an ending like this, it feels incredibly empty and unearned. Take the villain, Stella's brother. He suddenly comes in as the big bad, but this is the first time we've ever really seen him actually do anything. He's only been in 1 episode and did nothing. If anything, he should have been the main villain from the start of this season, with us slowly seeing him formulate a plan and do villainous stuff. You know, be an actual villain. But most of this season has been pretending to be a smart rom-com that it completely forgot he even existed. I swear, the contrast here, it's like if Spindlehorse got their own fans to write the season, then decided to bring in some real writers at the end to write the finale, because the difference in quality is crazy. The music in this episode was jaw-dropping. I was so impressed by the score, and the animation really popped here. I know I've been very critical in terms of Vivzy Pop's style in the past, but here it's really effective and works so well. And even the writing with Blitz and Stolas was really solid because they actually are doing something new and not the same charade over and over again. This episode really nailed it. It felt like it had a good pacing, great acting, and phenomenal animation and music. But here's one thing I just want to quickly mention, because a big criticism I've seen online from this episode is that it feels too fast, like things are moving at an alarming rate. And I'd argue, not at all. The pacing just felt right to me in this episode. But I think the reason why people feel like it's too fast is because of what I said before. It's so good and different from what came before that it feels like we've been left in the dark. It's not too fast, it's suddenly acting like it's a big payoff, but forgot to do the setup. Just like I referenced, it feels like watching shows endings before watching the beginnings. There's so much that just comes at you. It all feels so alien. Like all the past 5 episodes, at least, at the very minimum, should have been hinting or at least building towards this episode. You know, like have Stryker making a deal with Stella and her brother, or show us how Stolas has been ever since the Apology Tour saga. Has he really moved on? Do something like that, or even explain how the whole hell system works. Like, how is we got a Lucifer and Satan? Who's in charge? They don't say. You know, give us something, just anything at this point, anything of value. I know I've been very critical about the direction of this series, but if this is the game you want to play, even if I don't like it, you have to commit to it. You made your bed, so you gotta lie in it. Otherwise, what's the point of everything you've done so far? What is the point of us being here if that's all you're gonna do? And again, this is the very problem I've said since day one. Helluva Boss has had this problem for a while, and it's the fact that most of this season has been very aimless and lacking a sense of direction. And it's only in the end now when they decide, oh yeah, we still have all this stuff, might as well use him, I guess. That's just something I can't let go of, no matter how hard I try, because this stuff matters, people. This stuff is important. This is the very thing that's been causing this franchise to flop in comparison to where it used to be. The numbers have gone down drastically from where it used to be. It's not a failure by any means, it's still very successful, but compared to where it used to be, it's nowhere near. The fact they have nothing solid to keep people invested is the very reason why it's going downhill. They just throw everything at the wall and nothing sticks. And that's so disappointing when you realize how good this episode was. This episode deserved better. It deserved a better season to building up to it. And now because of that, it's going to be treated as nothing more than just another Helluva Boss episode, which it really isn't. It was such an interesting and fun watch for once, and actually made me excited to see what comes next, where they go with this story, how are they going to follow this cliffhanger. Because although this season flopped overall, this episode was worth the wait. And I want to know what happens next solely because of this episode. None of what came before, which is shocking. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy this episode, or was it a little too late for you guys? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, because there's a lot to talk about here and get excited over, but I want to see what you all have to say, because I read all of your guys' comments, and I know we haven't always agreed in the past, I know that, but I'm very interested to see what you guys have to say still. Because I value you guys' opinion, and I could be wrong on some things, you could be wrong on other things. Let's talk about it. And also, while you're at it, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more in-depth breakdowns on Helluva Boss just like this. And with that, peeps, it's been the Pink King here, and I will see you all next time.